have this value addition word that is being bandied and become very sexy right now. Everyone is talking about value addition, value addition. Just how much of value addition can you now put it on tea? Because I think it's gone full orbit. I don't know, but maybe if, in terms of packaging, in terms of taste, I'm trying to look at tea.
Yeah, I happen to have been in that industry briefly because I tried to export tea.
Yes.
Well, I've been in tea since 2017. You know, the value addition has two aspects. The farm, of course, it's that side. If you look at it, it's an important thing because then the farmer gets more revenue. Jobs are created, and this is what the government looks at. But the other side is it's not the government that can put up factories. It must be an investor who comes and puts in a factory and says, okay, I need to make tea, brand it, package it, and export it. But two issues arise always. One, many countries, in the same way you want value addition in your country, the other countries also want value addition in their country. They will not accept, many countries will not want already packaged and branded products coming in from another country. They want you to import bulk tea and put up your own packaging plants, and you do your own blending and packing and everything in their own country. So the countries to which we export, Pakistan, Egypt, Sudan, I've gone through some of those countries, they have their own manufacturing companies where they import the bulk tea and then package in the same way UK imports the bulk and then they package it, and you send it out. The Lipton tea you see all over the world, all these things is part of the bulk tea that goes from Kenya to all those destinations. So for those countries themselves, they want it also in the same way you want value addition. They want to encourage their people to do value addition. Now, the second thing about value addition here is the cost. For me as an investor to put up, because the government has created that environment. They have set up EPZs in Mombasa, in Nairobi, for you to put up those kind of things for export. But still, we have not been competitive. I have tried. When you try to put up a plant in order to package, because tea, is one plant, but when you talk about tea, then it comes into almost 200-300 different types, so you call them grades, but they're types, and it comes from the same tea. So it all depends on the way you blend it, and the blending, it comes after you have done the process of manufacturing it, all that curing process and all that, it creates different types of teas. So in Kenya, our tea is mainly the black tea, what we call the CTC, the black tea, which is the one we're the largest exporters in the world of this tea, as opposed to Sri Lanka that manufactures mostly the orthodox, but it's from the same type of tea. So even in this country now, the second thing about this value addition is that cost. There's the cost of power. There's the cost of finance. There's the other costs, related to freight and transportation and all those things. When you add up all these costs, you find you still cannot compete. For example, I've tried to sell my tea in Saudi Arabia, for example, one of the largest consumers of tea. You can't compete with Sri Lanka. They'll bring at a more competitive price the same tea, the same grade, because people ask for a certain quality and certain grades, and every country has its own. I mean, the tea that Somalia uses, for example, it's not the same one that is used in Egypt or in Sudan, or the one that is used in Saudi or in Turkey. Every country, depending on, they have their own tests, and so you develop. That's why you have tea testers and all those labs to create that blend of the tea that is required by that particular customer. But you find we cannot compete, and it's because of the different types of costs that production that are involved. So government can say, EPZ is there, you don't pay tax, do these things, but still, the idea of, you try to put up, you find you can't compete. So this is why people are not doing it. So the government cannot force value addition to an investor. I mean, the environment, they have to address a lot of issues really that impact on that competitiveness. This is why we keep talking about competitiveness, and the government must look at it holistically. You just can't look at, I've given you, if you said you're not paying tax, okay, I don't pay tax, but what about the other costs? I can't compete, because every country has that, by the way. If I take my tea to one country, the country also gives their people a similar environment in which to process duty-free. You don't have any taxes, they provide you water, they provide, like Egypt now, I mean, you can't try to export packed one, because they would give their people opportunity to process it in their own, zones where they are exempted from all those, and the government gives you free power, you're given water, you're given this and that, and the cost of labor is cheap, because when the cost of labor is high, It's not necessarily because our people are more expensive. Sometimes because of the tax levels. You reach the highest tax rate, 30%, the moment you reach 100,000. So I think there are so many factors. So it becomes very difficult.
There's a limitation on how much value addition you can do.
So you can talk about it until the cows come home, but you cannot do it if you don't address all the challenges regarding, and this, you look at maize, forget about tea and coffee. We can produce maize that is more competitive, that is cheaper than Uganda. We have to import it from Uganda because it's cheaper. Yet we are using the same kind of soil next to each other. Busia, Uganda is there, and Busia, Kenya, but you cannot be competitive because of so many other factors. So I think we need to look at those issues that affect agriculture in general, and that sometimes makes it very difficult to. We tried cashew nuts. There was a cashew nuts factory in Kilifi. So the government said no export of raw cashew nuts. Everybody must process it there. But the cost of processing of that thing, because it was a state corporation, dilapidated, not modern technology-wise, it became, you can't compete. So people find it's cheaper to send out the raw one, and eventually that factory collapsed. So there are many factors really that impact. I like taking the example of Dubai. In 1998, I tried to get export tea to Dubai. Let me tell you, those guys, they put up at the EPZ in Jebel Ali, they put up their own tea processing zones, and the government provides most of the facilities, complete. So they are now the largest exporters of tea in the world. In fact, about 60-70% of tea in a country like Saudi now comes from Dubai. Because they've given, they've set up so many facilities for processing that makes it very cheap for you to process and package. Because packaging also, paper, the cost, there's so many factors.
Yes.
Right now, one of the biggest packagers of tea here, one of the most famous, like Kerrow Gold, they told me they get their pepper from Sri Lanka. You've seen that pepper, looks very nice. So a lot of costs really.
That's synthetic,
Yeah, a lot of costs are involved. So you can talk about it, but if we are not competitive holistically in our cost of production, then you cannot talk about value addition. Some things, yes, like nuts now, nuts. We export a lot of nuts, and you've got to EPZ at the river, you find a lot of factories, people trying to package nuts. Even tea, there are people, farms who have now gone value addition. If you go to the airport, you find very expensive coffee and tea packaged. You see tea, coffee going for $4, $5 at the duty-free shops. Made in Kenya, and some of the farms have done their own value addition, but it's so expensive, you cannot just send it to every other country. You have to get a niche market in Europe or in US for you to sell it, at $4, $5 a kilogram of special tea and special coffee, that orthodox tea, the long ones and so forth. So I think it's not an easy thing, but the government needs to address generally the entire, business environment. This is why manufacturers, raising about all this cost of production and the competitiveness of the country.
So it's not really